Alright, so today I want to talk about a decision that you may be facing, and that is whether or not to purchase a ball python as a hatchling or as an adult. And I kind of want to go over some of the things that came into play when I made my decision whether to buy hatchling versus adult. And I thought I'd start with Bobby here, my bamboo ball python around my shoulders. And I actually bought Bobby as a full-grown adult. He was actually 4 years old. He's born in 2013, so he's actually 6 years old now. He was really mature when I bought him. And one of the reasons that I bought him as an adult ball python is because I actually just purchased a whole collection of females. Somebody was getting out of ball pythons, and I actually talked them out of selling all of their females to me. I think it was like 8 or 9 females. I had some normals and some pinstripes and some lemon blasts, and I didn't really have a really good male to breed with those. So I was looking around through Morph Market. And essentially, I go to Morph Market. You know, there's tens of thousands of snakes to choose from, and I wanted a bamboo. And I was looking around at all the bamboos on Morph Market, and you can sort by bamboos. And I was looking at males, and I think there was only 2 males that were of breeding age. One was just a little over a year old. I thought maybe it was kind of on the edge, maybe not old enough. And then I saw Bobby, and the color and the pattern on this snake and the intensity was just incredible. It just kind of blew away all the other bamboos that I've seen on Morph Market. And the thing is, when you're getting an adult mature snake, you're definitely gonna shell out the cash for a snake, because an adult, especially if you have like a really high-end morph like the bamboo was, it's definitely going to cost you more to actually get an adult male versus a hatchling. So I'd say if you're picking up a hatchling bamboo, like a brand new hatchling right out of the shell, you know, just had a couple meals maybe, you're probably looking at maybe about $300 to maybe the maximum of between $500 and $600, I'd say, depending on the breeder. And a lot of people kind of take into account the intensity of the bamboo, so some of the more high contrast bamboos might cost you a little bit more. But when I was looking at Bobby, the price tag on Bobby was $1,200. Let me tell you, if you're looking at an investment, from an investment standpoint, I would say it definitely paid off, because I produced a lot of bamboos. He definitely paid for himself several times over. It was pretty incredible. And I actually shelled out the $1,200 for Bobby here and got into the bamboos, which is pretty cool. But the interesting thing is you know, if you're looking at hatchlings versus adults, sometimes the adults are a little bit more, sometimes the adults are a lot more. And it really depends on the males versus females. So I'd say in most cases a male isn't that much more than a hatchling versus an adult. But on a female, on the other hand, it can be an extreme difference between a hatchling and an adult. And essentially, if you're looking for like pieds or clowns or something like that, especially clowns, I'd say if you go on Morph Market, you'd probably be hard pressed to find an adult female clown ready to breed. And if you did find one, the price would be pretty much astronomical. So for example, if you had a clown female hatchling, then maybe you go into a reptile show and you're looking at the hatchlings for the new stuff coming out, you just find a straight clown hatchling ball python that's a female. I'd say you could probably pick one out for about $300. Versus if you had a female that's ready to breed, say it's like 2,500 grams or more, 3,000 grams, I'd say you'd probably pay close to, I'd say maybe probably close to $2,000, maybe $1,500 to $2,000 for a female clown ready to go. Because essentially what you could do is you could take that female, breed it to another male, and the very first year you could recoup all of your money plus some if you had some really high-end males. And essentially that's what people are doing with the females, is they're kind of pricing them, assuming that you're going to breed them the first year and make your money back and maybe even more on top of that. So that's kind of the whole ball python game, hatchling versus adult. So what I'm gonna do is I want to show you a Hatchling Bamboo and versus something like Bobby. So Bobby, I would say if I was to sell Bobby, I could I actually wouldn't sell Bobby. There's really no price that I would put on Bobby, but if you had a full-grown bamboo adult male like this, I would say you could probably get anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500. And let me show you what a Hatchling Bamboo is. I've actually sold Hatchling Bamboos probably between, I'd say about $250 and $300 for hatchlings. They're a lot less expensive than an adult. So let's check out a Hatchling Bamboo. Alright, so take a look at this. This is my tiny little bamboo hatchling. This one actually just hatched out of the egg, and I actually offered it a live mouse hopper 3 times and it didn't eat. It's been a little bit picky. This is as small as you can get for a Hatchling Bamboo, but just look, this is essentially exactly the same as Bobby, only this one just hatched out of the egg not long ago. Beautiful bamboo. And I'd say I'd usually sell snakes like this, you know, pretty inexpensively, but the problem is if you're considering buying a hatchling, one of the biggest challenges in a hatchling is getting them to eat for the first time. So I've actually had some people that were interested in some of my hatchlings that haven't had a single meal right out of the egg, and I would say that pretty much this snake right here is probably one of the most difficult snakes that you can buy as pretty much as a snake keeper, because you have to figure out how to get this snake to eat. It really will only eat live mouse hoppers for the first meal. And this one's actually refused 3 times, and essentially if they keep refusing and refusing for a couple months, what I actually have to do is I have to go in and assist feed these ball python hatchlings. This guy's like really squirmy, but he is so super skinny, it's pretty incredible. And these hatchlings, you know, if you're used to breeding ball pythons and you're used to the challenge of trying to assist feed, then it's okay. But I would say for someone brand new into ball pythons, you definitely want to avoid snakes that are this small. I would say this is probably one of the most advanced snakes that you can get as far as anything in ball pythons. And the reason is because if you had an adult that would fast, you could actually just ignore it and not feed it, but a small snake like this, you definitely have to worry about getting some food into this snake at some point, because otherwise it won't survive. And I would say I don't really worry about my hatchlings until they're probably 2.5 months old. If they don't eat within the first 2.5 months, then you have to consider assist feeding, which is kind of putting the rodent right in the mouth and closing it up. I actually have some assist feeding videos here on YouTube. It's something that's a little bit more advanced. I wouldn't recommend actually assist feeding unless you absolutely have to. So what I want to do is I want to show you the next size of a hatchling, something a little bit bigger than this that you could actually be more comfortable with as a first-time snake, still getting into the hatchlings of ball pythons. So let me show you that snake. Alright, so this size snake right here, take a look at this. This is a Fire 100% het pied. This is, I would say, this is probably the smallest I would go in a hatchling if you're thinking about doing hatchlings versus adult. This one, usually what I do is I mark on their tubs the first 6 meals, and if they've had 6 meals, then I pretty much won't record the meals after that. I know a lot of people are really hardcore into recording every single thing, all the sheds and the meals and everything. Really, the only thing you really have to take into consideration is the first 6 meals. After they eat the 6 meals, they usually can go from the live mouse hoppers over to, I actually transition over to the live rats, kind of a fuzzy, and then from there I go to a frozen thawed. So I'd say this one is pretty much ready to go to a frozen thawed. It will eat almost anything at this size. Let's see if I can kind of get it out of its ball here. It's a little bit freaked out and scared, but these Fires are really awesome snakes. It is tucking its head under. See if I can get you a little view of the Fire. This is a really awesome snake. And these will actually be for sale at the shows. I'm actually selling these at the Denver Repticon. I was contemplating whether to hold back these fires, but I just have too much stuff I want to hold back. I got some Desert Ghost stuff. I got some triple het albino pied clowns. I have a scaleless head lesser. All that stuff I want to hold back. I have to figure out where I'm going to put it. And unfortunately, I just can't hold back these fires. These would be really cool because actually you could get a super fire, which is an all white snake if you bred two fires together. I actually have a male and a female. But this is, I'd say, if you're looking for hatchlings, this is probably the perfect size right here for a ball python hatchling. This is pretty beefy, and a lot of people ask, well, what's the weight on those? And I'd say it's a lot of times when you're coming up to the displays at the reptile show, they won't actually tell you the weights. You just kind of have to kind of look at it and see how big it is. You can definitely tell this one's a lot beefier versus the other one. This one's actually up on rats, and once they get on rats, they grow super fast because the meals are so much bigger than if they're on mice. So from here, I want to show you kind of one of my, I want to transition over to one of my female clowns. Let's take a look at my female clowns. It's kind of in between this and a full-size adult, although my clowns are actually of breeding size, and let's take a look at those. Alright, so take a look at the snake around my neck. This is a lesser clown female, and believe it or not, this snake is only 2 years old. I think it's almost as big as Bobby, if not bigger. It is a really big snake, and if you were to actually buy a snake like this, I'd say it would cost you a lot of money, and it would probably be really difficult to actually buy something like this because they are not readily available. Most people that actually raise up snakes and get them to this size are doing it for breeding. They definitely don't want to actually sell them, but it's kind of interesting how the snakes are mesmerized by the lens, and they're just kind of, for the first time looking into the lens, they're like, what is that? They're just, it's kind of weird how they get mesmerized by the camera. But the funny thing is about this is if you were to actually try to buy one, it'd be really difficult to buy one. I'd say for a lesser clown like this, I would say you'd probably pay close to, I'd say probably $2,000, because anyone that actually has this snake is thinking, all right, I'm gonna breed that snake instead of sell it. And the first time you breed it, you can definitely get a return on investment and get your money back out of it. And it's not really all about the money, it's about adding to your collection. And the only time I'd really get rid of this is if I had maybe, you know, 6 or 7 clowns and I had a bunch of clown stuff going on and I had too many clowns and I wanted to reduce some of my females. It's pretty much the only time that I would do it. Or I don't know, it's you know, sometimes you have kind of things that you want to phase out. I don't know if you'd ever really want to phase out clowns because they're so popular as a morph, but I actually have some adult female normals that at some point I want to phase out, but the problem is they still make money year after year after year, and it's really hard to actually get rid of a moneymaker that's actually producing some beautiful offspring and making some money and kind of adding to your whole breeding operation. So I would say you kind of get attached to these snakes after a while, not only because they kind of become part of the family, but because they add to the pretty much the upkeep and the maintenance by adding, you know, the value in selling their offspring, which is pretty cool. So from here, what I want to do is I want to actually show you my male that I actually bought to pair with this. I think it's a little bit too small now. Typically, I will only pair males when they're 500 grams or more, but I want to show you this male. It's catching up pretty good. It's actually a clown combo, so let's check out that snake. Alright, so take a look at this crazy snake. This is probably one of the most impressive snakes in my entire collection. This thing is really crazy looking. Just look at the head and the patterns on this crazy snake. This is a banana Enchi clown. It is pretty crazy, and I want to breed it to that the lesser clown, and hopefully I'll get the 4-gene combo, which would be banana Enchi lesser clown is what I'm kind of shooting for. Just look at the pattern on that thing. The interesting thing is, you're probably wondering, well, why didn't you buy a bigger snake so I could actually breed it this year? And the reason is because I pretty much knew what genes I wanted to add. I wanted to add the banana Enchi to the clowns because I saw some of these combos on Morph Market and I was like, wow, that is totally incredible. I've never seen anything like it, and I definitely want to get into that project. But the problem was the availability. There's nothing that's really that old for the banana Enchi clown. As a matter of fact, I went over there on Morph Market and I looked for banana Enchi clowns, and all of the ones from last year are actually sold. The only ones they have left are from 2019, which are tiny little hatchlings. So I was pretty much forced to buy the biggest snake I could in this morph, and that was this one, which is not very big. It's usually, usually you want them a little bit bigger to breed. So kind of what I'm thinking this year, I'm thinking I might actually use this as a breeder and try to breed those two clowns. And the interesting thing is I actually had a scaleless head male that I bred for my very first year, and it was actually 400 grams when I started breeding it. And essentially what you do is you pair it up with the females, and then after, I usually do like a cycle of 3 days with one female, 3 days with another female, and then I'll give it some time off to actually eat and recover from eating. Usually about 4 days for eating and recovering, and then back in with the females. So if you figure this one is probably, I'm not sure exactly how much this one weighs. I'd say it's probably close to 400 grams, which is pretty much on the very edge of being big enough for a breeder. But if I'm actually breeding this and then feeding it in between the breeding cycles, about halfway through the breeding season, I'll actually get this up to weight where it'll be big enough to breed, and then it'll actually hopefully breed those females. So it'll probably, those females will probably lay eggs a little bit later than I would expect, a little bit later probably than the rest of my snakes, but I think I'll be able to use this as a breeder to breed those clowns. Alright, so take a look at this snake. This is kind of halfway between a hatchling and an adult. So this one is actually a bamboo lemon blast. And take a look at this snake. This snake is really crazy looking. When it was young, it was almost like a super bright metallic snake. And now it's fading out a little bit as it's getting older. I'd say it was probably a little bit more impressive when it was smaller, but still a really impressive combo. It's a 3-gene animal, so it has the bamboo, the pastel, and the pinstripe. It'll be a really powerful breeder too. So essentially, if you're buying a female, females, they pretty much have to be the minimum of 1,500 grams to breed. And when I first started out in ball pythons, I was thinking, all right, I can wait a few years. I'm going to buy all hatchlings and just kind of sit on them because the hatchlings are a lot cheaper. And if you bought a hatchling, I think I was selling this for like $800 as a hatchling, and once this gets bigger, it's going to be worth quite a bit more. You're going to sell it. So essentially, if you're breeding ball pythons, when you pay more for a snake, especially a female, essentially what you're doing is you're paying for the time that it takes to get to the breeding. So if you're closer to breeding, you'll pay a little bit more money, and you're also paying for whoever kept that snake. You're paying for all the rodents that went into that snake to actually get to the point where it's up to size. So essentially, I'm recouping all the money for the meals that I fed this snake, and plus the money to get closer to a breeding season if I was to actually sell this snake. So I'd say it's kind of a double-edged sword. When I first started breeding ball pythons, I was just going to get hatchlings and sit on them. And then I found about a year and a half later, I realized, hey, I invested in all these snakes and I'm not making any money, and I have all this expense for the food and the bedding and the time, and I'm not making any money, and you feel like you're spinning your wheels. And essentially what I did at that point is I invested in some of those adult females, the pastels and the pinstripes and the lemon blasts, and I just wanted to jumpstart my breeding operation and actually start making some money to pay for all the expenses that I kept putting into the snakes. So I would say you probably, if you're starting out in a breeding operation, you probably want to do a little bit of both. You want to buy some stuff that you want to hold on to and kind of sit on, and then you want to buy some stuff that's already an adult, especially the adult females ready to go, so you can actually turn a little bit of profit, so you can actually pay for all your stuff so you're not going broke trying to breed snakes. Let me tell you, it is a struggle when you're starting out. And pretty much now I have a whole bunch of hatchlings that I can sell. I have stuff I'm holding back, and pretty much all the stuff that I'm buying outside of my collection are pretty much the hatchlings that I can sit on and wait, because I have money coming in from these other projects. I'm not like desperate for money trying to keep my reptile operation afloat like I was in the first year. Alright, so it is time for the question of the day. And BP Python asks, is Morph Market the only place I go to buy my snakes? And I would say when I first started out, I was pretty obsessed with Morph Market. I bought quite a few ball pythons from there. But I'd say over the last few years, I've bought pretty much a mix of Morph Market, and I bought all my ball python breeders. A lot of my breeders that I'm using now from a local reptile guy. And let's see, I bought my first 2 pieds from Tinley Park and the NARBC. That was kind of interesting, pretty enlightening. My very first year, I went to the NARBC in Tinley Park. Let me tell you, if you haven't been there, you need to go and see how crazy people are over reptiles. It's pretty amazing. And then I bought quite a few snakes on Craigslist, which is interesting. I actually bought Sunny, my super dwarf reticulated python, from a Craigslist ad. I pretty much got it for half price. It was a really expensive snake, the super dwarf purple albino reticulated python. And let's see, I also got one of my very first female normal ball pythons for free from a Craigslist ad. So I use a lot of different sources, but I do use Morph Market quite a bit, I say, and most people are pretty obsessed with buying snakes on Morph Market. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.